Hey, welcome to Geek Culture Explained. Karan back at it with a conversation that I'm certain will be ruffling a few feathers. And, depending on who you ask, ladies and gentlemen, conversations that ruffle feathers may be the only convos worth having. So since the release of Thor: Love and Thunder, I've seen something I thought I never would. Now, I'm not a full-blown Alex Jones level conspiracy theorist, but I do like to soak in as many perspectives and ideas as possible so I can utilize my human consciousness to form my perspectives. And there's a conspiracy theory that the Large Hadron Collider, which recently resumed operations, has tampered with space-time and thus launched us into alternate realities. Just not in a dramatic, earth-shattering way where we'd be physically cognizant of it. And honestly, that may be the only credible explanation for what I've witnessed. People in droves taking to social media to negatively critique the MCU? Publicly? Saying all kinds of wild things such as Thor: Love and Thunder makes Thor: The Dark World look like a masterpiece? How Phase 4 is collectively ruining the MCU? And even comparing the MCU to fast food. Now, the prodigiously small amount of you who may be familiar with some of my previous work over the years will recall that I said the MCU was like fast food back in 2019. Now, keep in mind, that was over 3 years ago, when the MCU was at its zenith coming off Avengers Endgame. As you can imagine, it was an immensely unpopular thing to say at the time. My perspectives even spawned a bunch of troll accounts on Instagram who were honestly more committed to me than any woman I've ever dated. You just had to be there. I recorded that podcast episode immediately after Kevin Feige unveiled the future of the MCU at San Diego Comic-Con 2019, which interestingly entailed everything coming out of Phase 4. Notwithstanding the fact that I really may be a pop culture prophet, I made that fast food critique based off my own experience with the MCU up until that point. It's also important to note that saying the MCU is like fast food is not a wholly negative critique, right? There's been plenty of days when I was feeling like utter trash, and the only thing that was able to console me was 2,500 calories from Taco Bell. No one can deny that fast food is scrumptious. But should your diet consist entirely of it? It's perplexing to me that Phase 4 is the reason many people started to dissect and reevaluate their relationship with the MCU, because the writing has always been on the wall for quite some time, in my opinion. While the films give you cool cultural moments, what are MCU films ultimately saying? Because at a certain point, ladies and gentlemen, cool things happening is not a sustainable model for any art form. Not in literature, not in video games, and certainly not in movies. The mythical Marvel formula is still very much in effect. It may just have a different skin largely because of the addition of Disney+. For further context, the entirety of the Infinity Saga, which spans phases 1, 2, and 3, consisted of 49 hours and 56 minutes across the films. Phase 4 alone has 50 hours and 21 minutes between the films and Disney+. And at the time of this recording, we're not even done with Phase 4 yet. Which, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the central question of this video. Is the MCU diluting itself? Now, before you think I'm being too negative, I have a simple ask. Just close your eyes for a second and visualize your favorite childhood movie that might be getting a modern day reboot. Think about your favorite film that got a sequel that was unable to capture the magic of what made the original so endearing. Think about your favorite TV show that went on for too many seasons and progressively became less interesting. The act of diluting has a fascinating recurring role within entertainment. And logically speaking, dilution is only possible if you've built yourself up to a position of cultural influence and impact. You can't dilute that which was never strong to begin with. And I want to remind y'all, the MCU started from a single film and built its way up to accomplishing something that's never been done in the history of film. Actually, scratch that. The history of entertainment. There's a term coined by a political scientist named Joseph Nye called soft power. The easiest way to describe it is the opposite of something like physical war, which you can imagine is a form of hard power. Culture, for example, would be an example of soft power. Hollywood, professional sports, hip-hop, all examples of American soft power. Kanye once said that America's greatest export is entertainment. And being Indian, it's truly perplexing to me that so much of the youth growing up in India has more interest in the lore of the MCU than of their own cultural mythology. I say that all to contextualize just how gargantuan of a shift it is for all of entertainment if the public starts critiquing the MCU and demanding higher quality from it. The recent outcry about Marvel Studios' relationships with visual effects houses further adds credence to the point of this video. Also, this is not a money conversation. If your retort to anything I say in this video is that Karan, the MCU is a cash cow between theatrical revenue and Disney Plus subscribers, then I fear you have missed the point of this debate entirely. Let's go a bit deeper. Disney Plus launched on November 12, 2019, and of the 10 things Kevin Feige mapped out during Comic-Con that year, 5 of them were Disney Plus entities. So to bolster a new streaming service, the MCU took a very huge gamble of fragmenting its audience. The expectation now was that because you would get more MCU content, you'd consume more MCU content. I wish I could be a fly on the wall during those meetings, because you have to wonder who raised the logical point that what if someone who was deeply invested in the MCU films was not able to keep up with the content coming out on Disney Plus? Wouldn't that jeopardize the quote-unquote connective tissue the MCU prides itself on? Was it just sheer hubris by Disney in believing that people would consume every bit of MCU-related content that was given to them? If that wasn't hubris, what about believing that people love the MCU so much that they would never dare criticize it on the scale they have since the release of Thor: Love and Thunder? Objectively speaking, ladies and gentlemen, the release of Disney Plus fragmented the MCU audience. You have a segment who went into Multiverse of Madness aware of what happened in WandaVision, and you have people who weren't. And then you also have curious cases like Moon Knight, which seemingly go out of their way to feel disconnected from the MCU, all while technically being part of it. Say it with me: fragmentation. The question then becomes, is it the fragmentation that's resulting in potential dilution? The notion that reduction of quality in the MCU that people are keen to acknowledge now is a product of the MCU having to satisfy a fragmented audience across 2 different storytelling mediums, streaming and film. I don't have any concrete data for you, but if you observe all the things that started off great and progressively became less interesting or weaker as time went along, they've all been victims of their own success, which is a philosophical paradox of the highest order, in my opinion. You can make a strong argument that the MCU will soon have the same problem Star Wars does as its original fan base gets older: the unlikelihood of being able to satisfy everyone. So that toxic MCU fan base will then evolve from one that hated everything because it wasn't the MCU to hating the MCU that wasn't the original MCU they grew up on. It's all endlessly fascinating. I'll give you a bit of production behind the scenes here. This video you're watching right now was a conversation we wanted to explore before San Diego Comic-Con. And given everything Kevin Feige mapped out for phases 5 and 6, I feel it only further contributes to this conversation I want to have with all of you. I'm certain there's a section of the fan base vehemently waiting for the entry of the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, X-Men, and Secret Wars. And they also probably think that that will reinvigorate the MCU and make it great again. But you should be very open to the possibility that they may just make a greater case for the conversation of the MCU diluting itself. Because there's only 2 things that are undefeated: Father Time and being a victim of your own success. Actually, let's add a third: and feeling like utter trash after consuming large calories of fast food, for good measure. I'm looking forward to reading all the comments and seeing how you contribute to this conversation below. Even if you are the most die-hard MCU fan, do you ever feel overwhelmed with the sheer volume of content? Do you ever feel that it's becoming somewhat of a chore to keep up with everything? If you were locked in a room and could watch one MCU film while having any fast food of your choice, what would it be? Okay, let me shut up and get out of here, because I'll just start doing rapid fire questions and then this video will never end. Alright, I'm out for real. I'll talk to y'all on the next video. Goodbye.